I feel delighted and honored to welcome Mr. Febre. He is a member of the United Nations Task Force on Social and Solidarity Economy. Born in France, he studied physics and economics. He first worked in a multinational company and then led the International Fellowship of Reconciliation, a faith-based peace organization. He later gathered 120 Nobel Prize winners and led a Europe-wide campaign against hunger in the world. He became Deputy Director of the United Nations Development Programme in Geneva, Switzerland, and founded the World Alliance of Cities Against Poverty. He is one of the leaders of the Dialogues in Humanity and of the Home for Humanity Global Initiative. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to welcome Mr. Febre.
Georgie, namaste.
Namaste.
Let me admit in front of the whole world, you are one of my most favorite person on the planet. So happy to see you. So we are all, whole stage is yours. And the topic which we'll be listening from you is Agenda 2030. What have we achieved in attaining global peace?
Thank you. Well, Agenda 2030 is not just a resolution adopted by all governments at the General Assembly of the United Nations in 2015. It claims to be a plan of action to strengthen universal peace. And to do that, it sets 17 goals that Sabita has been talking about to be reached by all countries in 2030. And that includes the eradication of extreme poverty, but above all, Agenda 2030 is not a mere plan of action. It is a promise made by all governments, a promise to shift the world on a new path by 2030, ending extreme poverty, ending hunger, fostering inclusive societies, protecting nature. And not only did governments promise to reach the goals, but they actually pledged to leave no one behind. Now, 9 years later, and 6 years away from the deadline, are we on track towards peace? There has been local progresses on some goals, but some regressions too. And in terms of peace, it rather looks like since 2015, we have moved backwards. We're all aware of the war between Russia and Ukraine and of Israel's massive military response to Hamas armed violence or of Houthis' attacks on commercial ships in the Red Sea. But there's a lot more than what the media report. Today, 52 countries are affected by armed conflicts, more than 1 out of 4. Last year, armed conflicts killed 170,000 people and maimed millions. Years of efforts by millions of people to build homes, schools, factories, hospitals, shops, railways, roads, and goods collapsed in a few seconds under bombs, rockets, and fires. Not to mention the lifetime trauma inflicted on millions of children who trusted that adults were taking care of them. Now, there are very few wars between countries. The majority of clashes are non-international. They are fought by armed groups against the government or against each other. Many would not exist in a situation of shared prosperity. Some are criminal and linked to drug trafficking. Some even have a religious background. This proves that we urgently need spiritual and social progress. Now, be it as it may, wars, armed conflicts, and terrorist acts are taking far too big a toll on people and make it difficult to reach the goals set in Agenda 2030. During the last few years, wars, the spread of nuclear armaments, mounting tensions in Asia, the expansion of NATO, and the threat of a militarized outer space have triggered a new global arms race. In 2023, some $2,400 billion were hijacked from productive investments to be wasted in military expenditures. This is 11 times the total amount of official development assistance provided by rich countries to the developing countries. Now, if one adds up the impact of armed conflicts on energy costs, the way in which the COVID-19 pandemic was managed, and the global trade competition, in total, a huge amount of precious resources are also diverted towards emergency aid, debt reduction, and the fight against inflation. Now, it is no wonder that the 2030 agenda has derailed. It would be a miracle if it didn't. Yet we need Agenda 2030, as the previous speaker said. We need it as such and as a means to restore peace. As a matter of fact, we owe Agenda 2030 to the 2 billion children under 14 in the world who are in our custody. Achieving Agenda 2030 is the condition for giving them a chance to live fulfilling lives, free from want, fear, and violence, with access to education, healthcare, and social protection in a clean environment. Now, do not believe that this is wishful thinking. We are so used to all kinds of deprivation that we end up thinking that poverty, inequalities, hunger, pollution, diseases are unavoidable. They are not in our times. Nowadays, there's no justification for the hardships experienced by many other than the fact that we have not risen individually and collectively to the values that we proclaim. We did not even rise to our full potential. I belong to the first generation that had the capacities and the means to overcome hunger, poverty, inequalities, and many diseases. The progresses in hygiene and medicine and the technologies that have been developed throughout the 19th and the 20th century made it possible. We failed to do so. Today's adults can accomplish what my generation failed to do. Some progresses has been made, but it is insufficient and far from what we can do. Now, in 2000, governments endorsed 8 objectives called the Millennium Development Goals to be achieved by 2015. And it is the success in halving the proportion of people who live in poverty in just 15 years, from 2000 until 2015, which encouraged governments to adopt the full Agenda 2030. Now, we must focus on putting this plan of action back on track because each of its goals can improve our lives, and because if communities at odds with each other work together to address common threats, they may discover each other, find out what they have in common, and be at peace. Now, next week on 22 and 23 September, just after the International Day of Peace, all governments will gather at the UN in New York for the Summit of the Future. For months, despite tensions and wars, the UN has brokered an agreement among all governments. A pact for the future will therefore be adopted in a week from now for the sake of the 3.2 billion youth who are under 24, so that before they reach my age, we expel climate upheavals from their lives and rid their future of any form of poverty, discrimination, and war. The Summit of the Future is our best chance to relaunch Agenda 2030 and to focus at long last on what threatens the quality of life of the entire human family. It is time to consider the entire humankind as a single human family, as written in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, all the more so that during the last 50 years, under the combined effects of demographic growth and the impact of technologies on nature, we have all become increasingly interdependent under several aspects of our lives. Nature speaks in Sanskrit to tell us that we are a single family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We have one world, we are one family, we share one future. And in a family, we care for the others and we take care of each other. So we all have to rise to the challenge of taking care of each other. That may take many forms, but that is how each of us can do his or her own part of building a sustainable peace. Agenda 2030 cannot be achieved if individuals and communities are not part of the process. It is perfectly justified to hold governments accountable for the promises that they make, but that doesn't exempt us from doing our own part. We have to keep asking ourselves, what did I do that allowed Agenda 2030 to derail? And what did I fail to do to boost it properly? Now, in order to put back in orbit Agenda 2030, we all must make 3 decisions. First, we all must change something in our life. Change something. At best, business as usual perpetuates damages. Second, we must stop supporting what hurts. Our economies are based on competition. We are pitted against each other as individuals, as enterprises, and as countries, whereas we should team up to satisfy people's needs and to heal nature. So, in Mahatma Gandhi's footsteps, before we do anything, let us think of the impact that this may have on the most vulnerable individual. If that impact is negative, we must abstain and find another way. Third, we must commit to advancing at least one of the 17 goals of Agenda 2030. Pick what you want, but do something. They are too important to be left in the hands of politicians or businessmen. So let us all commit to taking care of each other. One Earth, one family, one future.
Wow. Wow. Thank you very much, Georgie. It was, I think, very much thought provoking. You not only mentioned about the status, you gave us hope also. So you talked about those 17 goals that we decided as a world for ourselves, and with a pledge, you mentioned that nobody will be left behind, but somehow we moved backward. You mentioned about how many armed conflicts are going on, how budgets are being shifted from developmental budgets to the military expenditures. You mentioned a staggering figure of $2,400 billion. And you also said that 11 times of the total money provided by rich countries for development is being invested in military budgets. You also called upon the concern for 2 billion children who are under age 14, and they deserve a more fulfilling life. It is our duty. You said that poverty and inequality, making them zero, is not a wishful thinking, but you acknowledge that your generation could not do it, but the generation to come has the capability and resources to do it. It is so empowering. It is so empowering. I would like to tell you that United Consciousness has also constituted a wing of it that is called United Consciousness Global Youth. I think this message, I will make it sure that they will listen. It is empowering. You mentioned that millennial development goals really work. So the summit of the future, which is about to begin, we must utilize it and relaunch 2030 agenda. And as you said, that before we do anything, we should ask a question from ourselves, that what did I do towards that agenda 2030, and what did I do which will take us away from it? And 3 questions that you wanted us to ponder upon in our life is: first, today onwards, I'm sure that audience and me and people around in our organization will be doing it. What you mentioned, you called upon: 1, what I must change something in my life which will take me towards better world. Second, what I must stop supporting, which will hurt a better world. As Gandhiji said, it should really help the most vulnerable person possible. If it is helping him, then I should go ahead. And if it is not, I should restrain from it. Third is personal advancement, to take at least one of those 17 goals and start doing something about it. And living with the spirit of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That's so heart-touching. Thank you very much, Georgie. I'll connect personally to you. I again land our invitation. Please do visit Ujjain on 14th, 15th, or 16th of February. Meet all United Consciousness people. We'll be very happy to host you. Most welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
On behalf of United Consciousness, I thank Mr. Jean Febre for coming on to the platform of United Consciousness. Thank you so much.